scare on you. But today I'm not going to talk about a whole lot of awareness stuff. We do want to talk about your home network. So before we get going, so this is me, and I have done these things. I actually did work as a policy advisor for the state for a couple of years. And the reason I was there, you see, I was the founder of the Pisces project. Pisces is Public Infrastructure Security Cyber Education System. What Pisces does is no cost cyber monitoring for small cities, counties, public utilities, rural healthcare. And the reason that it's free is A, we get the state to pay for it, but B, because we collect metadata and alerts from those networks, put them in a monitoring stack, and 12 universities in Washington state are teaching people to be cyber analysts by being cyber analysts with live fire. And tried to work through the state to get that bolted onto the universities. Didn't work, but we kept going back and taking bites of that apple. And now Pisces is actually pretty big in Washington state. We're expanding into Hawaii and Montana. We monitor some rural healthcare in Kentucky, county in Idaho. And we are making the people that we need to make. Cyber analyst is the 5th fastest growing job in the country. I was the vice chair of the SLTT-GCC. That is the organization more in need of a vowel than any other. That's the State, Local, Tribal, and Territorial Government Coordinating Council with Homeland Security. And that was all about infrastructure protection. And going way back in time, I was managing consultant for VeriSign Global Security until my daughter was born, and I didn't want to go to work on an airplane anymore. And yep, Ralph, it wasn't marine biology. It was actually ocean optics, which pretty much is marine biology if the biology you're looking at is phytoplankton. And I did oceanography from space at the Jet Propulsion Lab. So you can see one of these things is not like the others. And catch me over a beer sometime and I'll tell you how I got from the bottom one to the one above that because the statute of limitations has expired. Okay, so yeah, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And this is kind of a big deal. You know, the United States is kind of, we're being pummeled by criminals, nation states. And recently we have a domestic problem. There are lots of Gen Z teens and 20-somethings that have leaned into the Russian affiliate model and use their infrastructure and tools to do things like compromise MGM Grand and Caesars and lots of other organizations. And you know, if you think about it, not a lot of opportunity if you're Gen Z and you're being told that income inequality is so bad that 5 people have the money, it's always going to be that way. It doesn't make sense to go into debt for a 4-year degree. It's not going to pay off. Wheels are coming off democracy and the planet's trying to kill us. So why not go into crime? So as I say, the United States is having its backside handed to us, and we all need to be very aware that the internet is there to sell to you, steal from you, and manipulate your opinion. And lately, it's got really good at doing that last one. And so when we come up on election time, and a whole lot of our federal partners that helped with election security are now non-existent, it's going to be on us. So buckle up because it's going to get real interesting with the disinformation. Okay, so why do we want to talk about your home network? We want to talk about your home network because you're working at home. And, you know, we all got used to this when, you know, the pandemic hit and everybody had to go home and work if you could continue to work. And now your home network is part of your organization, right? It's just a remote outpost out there. That makes it part of the attack surface. That means to get to the Department of Revenue, they can go through you, okay? That's why we need to talk about this. So you are critical infrastructure, right? Government is critical infrastructure. There's a lot of services that are there that basically keep people alive and, you know, keep transportation moving, things like that. And really what's going on right now, nation states and notably China is attacking your home routers and TVs and thermostats and cameras. And they use that to hide where they're coming from, right? To hide attribution. So we don't know who did it. And it's coming from your home stuff. So everybody needs to be aware of this. And we're going to talk about how to upgrade firmware and do some other things like that. You see the 2 news articles there at the bottom. In addition to, you know, having your stuff attacked, there are backdoors and other surveillance devices built into a lot of this technology because it's all coming from China. And China knows this is the easy way. This is the route that they can use to get in as easily as possible. So that company TP-Link, they have been banned in the US because their routers had a backdoor and Chinese were taking them down real quickly and using it as this basically a content delivery network for attacking government, right? All right. So in this business, we use a lot of secret handshake language, all right? So there's going to be some of that here, but I'm going to try and keep a lid on it. But it's really good to focus on the business outcomes that we want to avoid, right? So scary Russian cyber buffer overflows, something blockchain, cyber something. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about that. Unauthorized disclosure of protected records, because we know what that costs, about $300 a record to clean up. Theft through business email compromise, account redirection, right? So an employee sends a message into HR saying, I got a new bank account. Please start depositing my checks here. And if somebody's not paying attention, that happens. And lots of money gets lost that way. Extortion, that's ransomware. They'll snarl your network and then they'll say, well, you want your network back, you got to pay us for a decryption key because everything on the network has been encrypted. Your network can be used to attack others, right? The third party attack. And then just knocking you down to knock you down. And given the geopolitical situation the world is in right now, that destructive disruption is happening more and more. So you don't want your home network to be the reason that any of these 5 things happen, right? So let's stay focused on the things that we're really trying to avoid here, and I'll try and stay away from this, the spooky language. Okay, there are 3 prevalent ways that computers are attacked and compromised, right? And many of them involve you. So credential abuse, things like credential stuffing that I'll explain. Vulnerability exploit, right? So if you haven't updated your home router or your TV even, it can be cracked open, okay, by somebody on the other side of the world, right? And then social engineering, right? That's the phishing, fooling you into giving up a password, something, financial details, right? There's a lot of ways that this is done. So those are the 3 things. We boil this down to the 3 things you need to watch out for. These are them. All right, here's how credential stuffing works. So consider Yahoo. So Yahoo, as they were going through an acquisition, lost 1 billion passwords, okay? Did not help their valuation, actually, going through that acquisition. And we have these 1 billion passwords, and you can get a copy of these 1 billion passwords. Well, I can take those passwords and I can use a botnet, compromise computers all over the world, and start using all of those passwords against your account. And I'll probably get a hit, right? Because people don't pick good passwords still. Multi-factor authentication is not pervasively used still, okay? So when we say that this is, credential stuffing, right? What does that mean? Well, it means, and here's an example, this is me. So this is my Microsoft Authenticator. And what this says is I was getting a login failure every 20 seconds for 4 days, okay? And they were coming from Moscow and China. One came from Kuwait, India. So clearly, this is not a person behind a keyboard. This is a centralized system that's instructing all of these compromised computers all over the world to use all those passwords against my account, right? So this is the real deal. If you are using an authenticator app, you can go onto your app and you can say, show me the recent activity. You might see stuff like this. Now, I'm willing to believe that state of Washington uses something called conditional access policies, and it would be impossible for you to log in from Hebei, China anyway, right? But like we do. But this stuff is going on all the time. Password guessing is the background noise of the internet right now. All right. So how do we avoid this credential abuse? And I know that we're going to talk about home network security here, but there's a few tools I would like to give you and a little bit of awareness here. Okay. So NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. The whole business about upper, lower, number, special character, blah, 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 change it once a quarter, that's out. That is out. Now use a passphrase, Okay, the first sentence of a book you can remember. Okay, 5 words separated by spaces. So this is true, or this used to be true. So we had encryption software in use at the city of Seattle long ago when Ralph and I were working together. And we have to have a master decryption phase, right? You have to have a key. If all else fails, you can get into that laptop. Somebody left the organization and they have something there we got to get. So we had to have this master decryption key. The passphrase for the master decryption key for the city of Seattle was, "The galley is always at the Seattle end of the boat." And if you've ever been on a ferry, you know that's true. The galley is always at the Seattle end. Okay. That is a passphrase. There's no way to use random, letters, characters, et cetera, and what's called brute force that, right? Just figure out every combination of letters, characters, et cetera, till you get it. Because it's so long, it would take longer using today's computing power than the universe will exist. Okay. Always use multi-factor authentication. Use an authenticator app, right? If your second factor comes over just SMS, a text message, that ain't good. That can be surveilled. Okay. Use a password vault. So I use Bitwarden. I've used Keeper before. There's OnePass, LastPass, Dashlane. There's a whole bunch of these. These are really good to use. And then you only need to remember one password, passphrase, and that's to open the vault. And it will do everything else for you. It'll pick passwords, and you don't even need to know them. Okay. It is best not to store passwords in browsers. And I'll show you why in a second. Now, see that URL there, or that site, haveibeenpwned.com. Again, the secret handshake language. What you can do is go to that site, put in your email address, and it will tell you if that's ever shown up in a password dump. Okay. And it will tell you where. And if you use the same password elsewhere as was in the dump, they're going to get you. They are going to get you. So here's how to avoid credential abuse. Now, your browser. So here's Chrome. Chrome needs to be updated, I don't know, weekly. I mean, like all the time. Google does a pretty good job of, making sure that you're going to get the little update thing there if there's a new version or it's called a patch, right? An update. So if you have an unpatched browser, okay, and you run across a rigged site with an info stealer, and there's a lot of those out here, and this has become very prevalent, right? Soon as you hit that site, that info stealer goes to work and it will pull all the credentials out of your browser that you have stored. And now your bank password and your work password all belong to somebody else, right? That's why I say it's better to use a vault than a browser to store your credentials. And there's, this is an ongoing, I don't want to say argument, but topic of discussion between myself and some other people. Some people say browsers are more secure. My advice, use a password vault. Okay. All right. Now let's start talking about network stuff here. So all of these things are made in China, especially when you're talking about your home IoT, right? That Ring doorbell, right? Thermostats, all of these things that you can network, okay? All of these things were developed somewhere else. And it's really not a good idea to let these things just lie fallow. And if you are let them connect to the internet, that means, depending on how it's done, the internet can connect to you. And that's when they take these things over and they use them to launch other attacks. Some of those attacks, for example, are denial of service attacks. So your TV will be throwing packets at some target, and TVs all over the country will be doing that until they just blow somebody off the internet. All right. TVs, all the Windows, PCs, laptops, right? Depending on the brand, a lot of the parts come from China. I know that the federal government not only tries to keep tabs on stuff that may be built into the technology that we don't want there, there are also prohibitions on using technology from certain companies. You will find now that I know we all do competitive procurement. In a lot of RFPs, the language is now you can't use any technology that you're going to propose cannot be from these vendors. And that's a real good idea. So anything that's smart, okay, all that stuff is dangerous, okay? Kitchen appliances with an app. So at my house, I don't have any of this stuff. I really don't want a robot vacuum cleaner that I can control from my phone. I just don't see any need for that, right? I don't need my refrigerator to tell me I'm out of something because I can open a damn door, all right? But there's a lot of people that have all of this stuff on their networks, and you may have even forgotten how much of this is on your network. So we'll talk in a minute about how to map your network and know what's there. This also includes the routers that are supplied by your internet service provider. We don't know really if they're updating these things like they should. And so you might have to take on that responsibility yourself. Or even better, I will give you a little bit of a primer on how to firewall your home network off from your ISP, which to me is a really good idea. And that's what I've done. Okay. All right, so here's your home router. Okay, you may have, a DSL modem. This is a cable modem. Okay, so just plugging this thing in and starting to use it, that's fine. It'll work. All right, but if you're going to take some steps to secure your home network, change the default credentials on the router, the administrator username and password. It's got one printed on the back, right? That's how you're going to log into it. I assume everybody knows how to connect to an IP address with a browser. It's not tough. But change the username and the password. For the Wi-Fi password, it also comes with a default. I don't think there's any way for anyone to guess that, but it's still a good idea to create a long one for your home Wi-Fi. There are various settings of encryption that you can use on those routers. Okay, WPA3 is the one that you want. That is really going to secure the communications between the router and the ISP. Definitely something you want to do. Rename your network. So the SSID is the service set identifier. That's the name that your Wi-Fi network throws out there. Hey, I'm here, right? Change it to something that, doesn't, it's not your address. It can't be something like that. Mine is NSA-5709, just to entertain my neighbors. I know somebody that's got one FBI surveillance van. Have some fun with it. But don't identify yourself with that. Firmware. You got to keep your firmware updated. Now, again, I don't know that ISPs are taking care of doing updates to firmware and this is their property. It's not yours, right? We rent this stuff. And you can take this on yourself and see what it says here to patch security vulnerabilities. Okay, so here we got a little language we gotta talk about. Patch. Okay, that's the update. All right, that's what the computer people, the IT people, they call it a patch. Okay, but what is a vulnerability? So let me just dive into this a little bit. So here's the seminal paper on how to do something called a buffer overflow. All right, let me explain this. Hopefully this will make perfect sense, and now you'll understand why things go bad, how they go bad, and why you got to get after this. Okay, so a long time ago, and because I'm OG at this point, this program called SendMail. SendMail was the first MTA, mail transport agent. And SendMail ran on Unix computers, and a guy named Eric Allman wrote this program. And he's writing SendMail, and he says, okay, so an MTA, it's not what you type your email into, it's when you say send, it's the computer on your network that it goes to, and that computer will figure out what its destination is and send it. Okay, that's what an MTA is. So Eric Allman is coding this thing up, and he says, well, I need a variable for sender address. Now, sender address is never going to be more than 255 characters, so I'm going to give it a 255 byte buffer, okay? A variable space you can put stuff in the computer's memory, okay? And he did not bound it. He did not make it impossible to go over that 255 bytes. So when a piece of email comes in and it has a sender address of 256 bytes or 712 or 1491, you overflow the buffer. Okay. And if you do that just right, you get that offset just right, you can put your choice of executable code into the running stack of the machine, and you now own the machine. Now, things go bad all the time. You will read about Cisco firewalls, Sonic Wall, Ivanti remote access, even remote desktop protocol from Microsoft. And when these things get a vulnerability and the manufacturer says, well, here's the patch, okay, what happens is nation states and criminal gangs go to work immediately, reverse engineering the patch to figure out what it fixes. And that way they can code up the exploit to break that thing. Simultaneously, the scanning of the internet starts right away. Now, how does this affect your home network? You don't have a Cisco firewall, I'm pretty sure, but things go bad like these home internet routers, these ISP routers. And, you know, the scanner doesn't care who you are. It's just looking for that vulnerable piece of technology. So it becomes a race. And, working in an IT department, if a vulnerability comes out and it's on a product that faces the internet, drop what you were doing. That it's an incident that you need to handle. Okay. All right. So we have to keep our things patched. Okay. All right. Well, how do you install firmware? How do you do this? All right. So here is a screenshot from something called DD-WRT. And what this is, it's firmware. And you can use this to go on down to Goodwill, get yourself a perfectly good Linksys router, right? A Wi-Fi access point, and you flash it with this firmware and you turn it into a firewall. It's a really great thing to do, right? And you can firewall yourself off from your ISP router. All you do is you go to this control panel, and every piece of technology will have something like this. You can log into your home router, your ISP router, and there will be a way where it says, get the firmware, upload it in here, and then go ahead and do that upgrade. Now, when you do that, do not do it over Wi-Fi, because the very first thing that happens is it's going to shut the thing down, and then it will fail, and then it's a brick. All right. Ask me how I know. Yeah, that's how I know. Okay, so upgrading your firmware is not hard, but does need to be done carefully. You need to make sure that there is just nothing that's going to break that connection while this is going on. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a white knuckler, but it goes well. We'll come back to DDWRT here in a little bit. Okay, back to your home router. You got a firewall on there, right? So you want to tell it, yeah, activate this firewall, and all of your connected devices, right? Your desktop and laptop computers, they have firewalls on them too. Just turn them all on. Just turn them all on. There's default settings that are going to be perfectly good. In that way, no one on the internet can get into your home network and start looking around at what you have there and whether or not anything's vulnerable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because I guarantee you, people are out there doing research. They know you work for the state. They know the state has stuff that they want, and they're looking for that path of least resistance, right? Firewalls everywhere. All right. Remote management. There is absolutely no reason to manage your home router from the hotel route set right now. I mean, it's like there's no reason for this. So you should turn off remote management on that router. If you need it, turn it on while you need it and then turn it off. You do not want that exposure out there. You don't want somebody starting to guess passwords there, right? Especially if you've set an easily guessed password and didn't use a passphrase or 5 words separated by spaces, whatever. Okay. WPS, that is old timey security protocol, Wi-Fi protected setup. Just turn it off. All right. And then universal plug and play. When you use universal plug and play, the device you put in there can automatically open up ports to the internet. Okay. Holes through your router, right? And that can be a two-way hole. We don't want that. You do not want any kind of exposures on your home network to be available over the internet from the other side of the world. Okay. So there's some home router stuff. And again, this presentation will be made available. And I have a reference here at the end of this thing where you can find a whole lot of this information in one place, compliments of the NSA. Okay. Your network at home. You got a lot of stuff on there. There's several phones. I have a Fire Stick on mine, right? I don't have a robot vacuum cleaner, right? Fire Stick is probably as far as I'm going to go. But you're going to find out you have things on there you've forgotten about, right? Well, if you're really good and you want to learn a little networking, this stuff is not hard. Okay. So create a guest network. And you can see the little diagram there. There's two different networks. Okay. One of those is for your kind of IoT stuff. Okay. And then you got wired connections for Ethernet, but you can also set up another wireless connection for something that you want to keep segmented off. Okay, would be a really good idea to have your work computer on that segment where nothing else is there. Your work computer is the only computer that can connect to that particular Wi-Fi signal, right? That's a really good way to do it. Okay. You can think about it as creating a guest network, but more, I think, to the point, you could create a network that's only for your work. Okay. The gamers stay off of there, right? The TV devices, all of that. Okay. Creating one of those networks for your IoT stuff, if you have a lot of that stuff, also a good idea, right? Keep them all on their own segment. And then your smart devices, make sure you're using good passwords on those. Don't just leave things at defaults. Definitely don't leave things at default. So here's a story. So you may have read that Iranians compromised a number of water utilities in the United States. Okay, so critical infrastructure, here they come. All right, well, it turns out they weren't the best Uber hackers in the world. What they did was went on the internet, looked up the default passwords for a certain kind of programmable logic controller, right? PLCs are in use. That's operational technologies, and like utilities have a lot of those things. And a whole bunch of water utilities never changed the default passwords. And so they basically walked in and started screwing stuff up. Okay. Don't leave stuff at defaults. Okay. Keep your devices patched, right? Including your operating system. Microsoft and Apple, they kind of patch themselves, but it's really important to reboot your computers after you take on the patches. So right now, patches are coming down right now. We are getting patches from Microsoft right now. And later, when you look at your bottom right of your tray on a Microsoft computer, it's got a little orange dot. Time to reboot. Don't resist, because the patches have to be activated by that reboot. So if you don't reboot, you're not updated, right? Whatever security vulnerabilities that we're fixing are still extant. So you have to reboot. All right. Your behavior has everything to do with this too. Your security practices, your behavior, to the extent that you can, monitor your network. All right. Which you got to know what's on there. I'm not really suggesting that you create a monitoring stack and start feeding it with data and doing things like that. But definitely keep an eye, especially because your firewall, you use your ISP's router as a firewall, or you do another one yourself. Look at the logs every once in a while and look for stuff that doesn't look right. Okay. Now, anything that's on your network that you don't recognize, you can block it at the firewall. You can disable it that way. It can't talk. It's a good idea to do that. Obviously, run antivirus. Okay. Antivirus, anti-malware software. And that needs to be updated periodically as well. And conduct your remote work securely. What do I mean by that? So, OPSEC. Okay. OPSEC means don't let anyone know what you're doing. So it's really good to have a dedicated space for that. It is good to make sure that your screen is not visible from outside the house or somebody walking by, something like that. So just be secure in your remote work, right? Your government. It's kind of important. We need you. More practices. All right. A lot of us use a VPN, and I, uh, I actually like to use a VPN in a browser. I use Tor. We'll talk about that in a bit. Reboot your devices. Okay, here we go. So I reboot my phone once a week. I turn it off, turn it on, right? Why? Because if it picked up some cruft along the way, right, from like, going to websites and, looking at airline schedules, whatever, all right, who knows? I could have run over one of those info stealers. And if that thing is there and it's running in memory and it's waiting for me to type a password so that I can get it, okay, I just flushed it out. So rebooting your device is super important. Okay, some advanced topics here. All right, segmenting your network. I talked a little bit about this, but you can create multiple segments on your network. You do need to know a little bit how IP addressing works. So on your home network, it is highly likely that your IP space is 192.168. Something. Okay. You're on the inside of your network that your ISP presents to you internally is probably 192.168.1.1, I would imagine. Okay. Well, that network, 192.168, anything, okay, that network, it can be used by anyone. You should never just go pick IP space. You should use that network. Why? That's one of three different networks that is for use by anyone. Okay. The internet does not know how to route to that network, right? So when you go to Google, Google sees you coming from the IP address on the outside of your router. That's what's being presented to the world. It can't see any of those addresses internally. There's no route to those, okay? So when you segment your network, you can have your computing devices on 192.168.1 dot anything, okay? You can make your IoT devices 192.168.2 dot anything, okay? And then you have these segments on your, you keep these things separate, right? So one can't even talk to the other, and you've segmented your network. Okay. And I'm making it sound easier than it is because, the IP addressing, you got to kind of figure some of that stuff out. You have to know a little bit how routing works and things like that. But to the extent that you can, segment your network. I like to firewall my home network away from my ISP. Okay. And I use this DDWRT firmware. So here it is. This is if you have like a Linksys device, a Linksys access point, works perfectly well, $5 at Goodwill. Okay. You flash it with this firmware, which means you download the firmware, you connect an Ethernet cable from your laptop to that Linksys access point, and you activate the upgrade and tell it what file to pick, the one that you downloaded. All this is really easy. And then all of a sudden, it's not a Linksys access point anymore. It's a DDWRT firewall. Okay. And it's a really good one. So this, if you can, this is a very good experiment to try at home, and it's extremely effective. There are tools you can use to map your network and know what's there. I'll show you one in a second. Okay, your DHCP scope, what is that? So when you plug a device into your home network, right? So you join the wireless network, something gives you an IP address, right? You don't figure that out yourself. It just happens, right? Well, that's called DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Well, look at your DHC scope, right? And so I would do this on my DDWRT firewall and say, well, I'm only going to have 6 devices on the network, so I'm only going to create 6 possible addresses that I could give out. And that way, nobody can just join your network, get an address, and be on there. Okay. So keep that DHCP scope screwed down. These are a little bit advanced, obviously, but also very, very good practices. Now, what is this Nmap, ZenMap thing? So you get this, you put it on a computer, right? You just download it. It's free. It's, open source. And it will tell you everything on your network. And you will find some surprises. You will absolutely find some surprises. There's a chance that you could find probably not that many things. I don't think this is someone's home network, but so Nmap is a tool that bad guys have used for a very long time to map networks. ZenMap is one that does graphical, right, which is always kind of nice, and it's pretty easy to use, right? The instructions are all out there. So get yourself a copy of ZenMap and put it to work and find out what's on your home network. Privacy. Okay. So every app you have on your phone surveils you. And that information is spirited off and then sold to people called data brokers. So it's really a good idea to kind of limit what you are exposing to that kind of stuff, because data brokers will sell data about you to anyone that buys it. Law enforcement routinely circumvents the warrant process by going out and buying data from data brokers. All right. Congress knows this is something that they need to address. There's been legislation that's proposed, not because we were all howling about data brokers, because Congress figured out that Congress could be tracked this way. All right. DuckDuckGo is a really great privacy browser. You can configure this thing to just like destroy everything it had when you close the browser. You'll see flames coming up because it destroyed everything. And yeah, there are some cookies that you want to keep on there, right? You want to like stay logged in to certain things. It's okay. But it's a very good privacy browser. It does not expose things to these ad networks that are hoovering up all this information about you, repackaging it, selling it to data brokers, and using it to just sell you stuff, right? Remember, the internet, sell to you, steal to you, and manipulate your opinion. Tor. If you want to be really, really super spooky, you can use Tor. Tor is the onion router. That is fully anonymous web browsing, or at least that's the way it's packaged. It was actually developed by the US Navy. So the way it works is you're using Tor, which is a specially configured version of Firefox, and you want to go to Google. And so on the way to Google, right, when you type in google.com, it goes to Bahrain and then London and then Moscow and then to Google. Google thinks you're coming from Moscow. Okay, that's the way it works. So nobody knows where you are. It is completely anonymous. It doesn't store cookies. Everything goes when you close the browser, right? So it's good for that one-time use. Don't use it to go on the dark web and buy things you shouldn't. But when you want to be fully anonymous, use Tor. It's probably not good to use at work because I would think an alert would go off. That's probably a policy violation. Proton Mail. Okay, Proton Mail, end-to-end encrypted email. It's great stuff. And in fact, Proton Mail just came out with a product that is secure against quantum computing. So they're out in front here a little bit, and that may end up not being true, but that's the press release I just wrote. Proton Mail is great if you want to use that as your email service, right? Instead of Gmail, it's end-to-end encrypted. They do not have the decryption key. Law enforcement could go grab all of their servers and they would have nothing. Okay, that's what Proton Mail is for. And you're listening to me and you're thinking, well, these are criminal tools. No, no, these are privacy tools. These are definitely privacy tools. 7-zip. Okay, that's great file encryption, right? It's free to use. All you do is give it a good passphrase, encrypt a bunch of stuff, throw it into one of these archives, and nobody can get it. It's great. Signal. So Signal and WhatsApp are end-to-end encrypted messaging. WhatsApp is owned by Meta. Meta monetizes everything you do, right? Facebook just hoovers up every keystroke of yours and it's off for sale, right? So I'm not the biggest fan of WhatsApp, but Signal I love. I have both of them on my phone because I like journalists and military and stuff like that. So here's a bunch of tools to use for privacy. Definitely, you know, investigate these because the way that we browse the internet now just gives up too much. Maybe we'll get a national privacy statute at some point. I'm not going to bet on it. Congress is a little dysfunctional. And so what's happened is that we have the California Consumer Privacy Act and state level statutes that have a private right of action built into them, which means if some hospital loses records and your record is one of those, you can join a class as a plaintiff immediately and sue. So now we're suing our hospitals out of existence with class action suits because of California Consumer Privacy Act. Thanks, California. Okay. All right. So a little more awareness stuff because I want to give you a tool to use. So this is reasonably recent. I got this from the Washington State Fusion Center because my buddy Lance over there and I trade stuff all the time. And so this is obviously a fake job offer. Okay. You appeared in searches this week from Goldman Sachs and Target. Ooh, they're looking to hire me. The whole image on here is a link. Okay. So you hover over this, you go, oh, I see. All right. Not only is the return address wrong, that's clearly not LinkedIn, but as I hover over here, I can see that this goes to a dental office and not the App Store. Okay, so you're probably all proud of yourself thinking, huh, I'm not going to fall for that. Take the extra step. Okay, here's the tool. It's called virustotal.com. You can plug that URL into virustotal.com and it will run, I think, almost 100 different malware checkers over, excuse me. You can upload a file that, you got, somebody says, hey, here's our new return to work policy. That could be bad. This is a good way to check it out. So use VirusTotal, use haveibeenpwned.com. Okay. All right. So this is best practices for securing your home network. And that's actually a live link. So if you get this presentation, you can actually hit that link. Now, the NSA goes through essentially what I just did. And, there's not a whole lot we can do more than what the NSA is asking everyone to do. And they do it with language that everyone can understand. And I hope I have been understandable. So get that if you can. Download that, read it. It's a quick read, right? Cover your webcam. Again, OPSEC, right? Okay, here's some pro tips. If you didn't expect it, suspect it. Definitely. Everyone is trying to get your attention. You are getting messages through email, text messages, phone calls. We have deep faked voices now. How do you know it's a deep fake voice? The call comes in. I didn't expect that, and I'm being asked to do some kind of transactional thing. Okay, right? This is pretty easy rule to really help you out. If you didn't expect it, really something could be wrong. Okay. Um, Use virustotal.com and haveibeenpwned.com. Okay. But here is the pro tip ever, especially when you are doing work for the state, all personal use on a personal device. I know that in government, we have this policy of de minimis use. You can use the state's technology for your personal use if it doesn't create a security problem, cost extra, or affect productivity. And I can prove it does all three. All right. So when I was the CISO of the city of Seattle, we monitored everything. And I could prove that 40% of the compromised assets on the network were due to the use of personal email. All right. So here's Outlook. It's all cleaned up, no bad links, no attachments. And right next to it on that same computer screen is a web browser, probably unpatched, opened up Bubba's email service. What good did it do to spend that money? None. Okay. If personal use, Gmail lives here. Okay. Facebook lives here. Okay. You are doing the best thing you could possibly do to protect the state. Okay. All right. That's it for me. If you want, you can subscribe to the newsletter, the InfoSec Insider newsletter that I've been putting out every day for about 18 years. Ralph and I started that a long time ago. And yes, we do free security awareness trainings on the last Thursday of every month. So we'll be coming up. Let's see, am I going to be at ACES for this? It's coming up. All right. And we do a podcast every once in a while, and that's a lot of fun. All right. So Rhonda, back to you.
Mike, thank you so much. And everyone, I have opened up the chat. So if you have any questions for Mike, or if you just want to unmute yourself and ask away. Oh, we've already got a response here in the chat. So if I were to convert a router into a firewall with DDWRT firmware, does this connect between modem and router, or does this replace the router?
You put it right inside your ISP router, right on your side of the network. All you're doing, you just want to keep that thing away from you. Great question.
So between the router and before I start using it.
Ideally before you start using it, but whenever you can do it. And really the process I'm talking about is like 5 minutes to build this thing. It's really easy.
So I have a question, and I think it kind of piggybacks off that. So when you convert that to the firewall, do you connect directly to the firewall as the router, or does the firewall go between the routers? You connect to your router as normal.
So when you say between the routers, you only have one. You have one. It is your
Yes.
ISP router. That is it.
Yes.
Okay. On the
Yes.
inside of it, and I would actually turn off the Wi-Fi on your ISP router and broadcast Wi-Fi from that little firewall that you're going to build.
There it is. That's what we're asking. That's what we're
Right.
asking. So the access point
That
will now
clears
be
it.
the new thing. Okay, cool.
That
Awesome.
clears it. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. And yeah, we will have the presentation and the recording posted on the Cybersecurity Awareness website.
And Samantha is asking about YouTube videos, and I would imagine that they are out there. Yeah, right. I mean, this is when you watch somebody do it, you go, "Oh, I get it," you know. But that is probably a good idea to watch a video.
All
And
right.
urlscan.io, yes, that's another really great place where you can put in a URL and it will tell you all about it. I like VirusTotal because that was the first one, and I just always use that one.
All right. And here's a question. You have to put your provider's device into bridge mode. Is that referencing?
I didn't need to do that. I didn't need to do that. You can, and I've used one of these DDWRT access points as a bridge, but that now we're getting into stuff that's going to be a little complex to explain. You know, what is a bridge? I didn't need to do that. Mine works fine.
Okay. And then Devin has a recommendation as well. urlscan.io.
Yep.
To see suspicious links. Let's see. All right. And then what about buying so-called secure routers like Norton router?
Yeah, that's actually a good idea too, right? So the protocol that your ISP router uses is called DOCSIS, DOCSIS, right? You want to get a DOCSIS 3.0, and yeah, you can buy your own, and that way you're going to be taking care of it. You don't have to worry about whether your ISP is or not. I think that's actually a pretty good idea to buy your own. I like to just secure myself away from my ISP. I don't like them. I mean, who likes Comcast? Nobody likes Comcast. Oh, can I say that on a government?
No,
Okay.
no, you cannot say that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, you mentioned TP-link routers were banned. What
Yep.
What brands would you be using? Should they-
Anything but, you know, I mean, actually, Cisco makes pretty good stuff. Cisco bought Linksys. So, you know, Linksys, which, you know, at one time was just pretty commodity stuff. Well, now Cisco owns them. So I would imagine that some of their technology made it into those and right into the firmware in there. So I would just use Linksys. Also a good question.
All right. Well, we've got kind of the lull in the questions.
I just wanted to say thank you, and I just want to mention like it wasn't sure where this was going to go today, but like when you got to Tor, like that really popped me because I'd never thought I would hear that mentioned today. And like some of the stuff you hear being in stuff like this, like the TP Link ban, that's something specific I wanted to bring up because yeah, I work from home and I've worked from home for a long time. So there's things I just don't hear about. So when you said that, it just triggered in the back of my mind, like, wait a minute. I used to hear about TP Link all the time, and now I never hear about TP Link. Why is that? And boom, so here. So like I love this information. Thank you so much.
Good. All right, cool.
Yeah, and Mike also mentioned that he's got a podcast that he does regularly. So if you want to be up on the latest information or a part of that, I'm sure
Yeah.
the information is in the slide.
Yeah, like all of the login failures, okay, that was definitely a Chinese operation because of the podcast, because of the things I say. Hey, look what they're doing. Okay, well then they come after me.
Wow.
Now that I don't know if you can say.
No, you can't say that.
That's just called sharing the love. That's just sharing the love.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll tell you a quick thing here. I was talking to Ralph about this before everybody joined. That Pisces project that I told you about, right? We do the free monitoring. So the State Department wants us to deploy that in Balkan countries, North Macedonia, Serbia, Albania, things like that. And so I think we're going to do this. Consider the position that puts me in. I am going to be directly, personally between the Russians and their cyber targets.
Wow.
That could end badly. This might be the last time anyone sees me.
Thank you
Wow.
for your
All my
service.
hotel rooms will be on the first floor.
Okay, now I'm clearly terrified. So thank you so much, Mike. This really was entertaining and informative. So I appreciate you coming on to make Cybersecurity Awareness Month amazing. And I look forward to maybe having you back next year.
Yep. Tap me on the shoulder when I can do something for you.
All
All right.
right.
Thanks for coming,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Hope this helps. Bye-bye.
Everybody, thank you.